Welcome to Ops or Die, the podcast for people that know ops isn't sexy until it saves your ass. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And Elyse, why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Elyse Heob. I've been in healthcare my whole career, and I love the medical space and medical innovation. I've had two successful startups in that space. One was a corporate wellness program that got acquired in 2016. Another one was transparent surgical masks, and that blew up during the pandemic. We were able to help 19 million people get the mask worldwide, and I was really proud of what we were able to do there. So now I help all sorts of different startups, medical devices, diagnostics, and digital health with their strategy and operations. And so I'm here to talk with the operations experts here today and excited to share notes from a founder perspective.
Love it.
Well, great. And thank you, everyone. I'm Maria Pienaar. I'm a co-founder of ScaleSpark, and I'm here with my co-founder, Katie. And it's great to have a perspective of a founder who's gone through the journey and had some successful exits, which is what a lot of startups aspire to do. So can you give us a little bit more of an outline as your life as a startup founder and the journey that you've gone through that and also the realm of operations, how you managed to scale and win?
Yeah, sure. So starting way back, I started my career off with a fellowship with the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and I love public health. I love health impact. That's what's always in my heart. But the pace of federal government wasn't my pace. So it was a little too slow. And then I joined my first startup and I was like, this makes me feel alive. This is what we can do. We can do it so fast, and I can create things and people will use them right away. For better or for worse, you don't need a cascade of approvals. And so it's going to go right out there, whatever I create. So I developed a corporate wellness program. In public health speak, it's a chronic disease prevention program for adults targeted for employers, but we package it into corporate wellness because it was 2014, corporate wellness was hot. It was new, it was out there. And it was awesome. We got it out to 20 different employers in the greater Houston area. NASA was one of my favorite clients. I could always tell when I got something in from NASA, one of the engineers, because it was very documented with like timestamps and you do all your documentation for me. It's fantastic. Absolutely loved it. We got acquired in 2016. And then I left for grad school at Johns Hopkins. I was able to meet so many amazing people there who were interested in both the medical space and also commercialization of new products. And that's when I really got into the commercialization process. So I met my co-founders for ClearMask actually at a commercialization class. For ClearMask, it's a issue, transparent masks have been an issue in the deaf and hard of hearing community for decades. So it's nothing new. It's not my idea. But being able to communicate for everybody in healthcare settings with a mask, as well without a mask, it's something that's human and it's something that particularly impacts people when you don't have input coming in on the audio side. Everything's visual. And if you take away so much of the face, it takes away so many of those visual cues. But we all experienced that during the pandemic of getting rid of all of those visual cues. So I worked with my team. We had 4 co-founders and it was literally us against the world. We fundraised by doing a million different accelerators and pitch competitions, got bootstrapped everything, got our FDA clearance in March 2020, and then had to create a company that was alive and living in global in 2 months. so, so I led operations for all of that. It was wild, but we did it. And we scaled 0 to 45 million, no outside investment ever, 19 million masks worldwide. I was thrilled with what we were able to do.
That's amazing. And talk about timing, March 2020.
Oh
That
my
was
gosh.
that was pretty impressive. That's like almost like you were a little psychic on when the world would absolutely require that.
It was so funny because people always comment on the timing, and we're like, oh no, we've been working on this for years. We worked on the R&D for 3 years, and our FDA application, since we did it ourselves, takes about a year to put it all together and like submit all the documents. And then once we got it, it was like, okay, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah, yeah. And great stories. I mean, so awesome, and congratulations on both your exits. That was amazing. But it's easy to see why so many people look at founders as this glamorous kind of sexy, go for it, take over the world kind of role. It's not always that glamorous. It's a lot of hard work and long hours, and operations specifically pretty draining. And so when you're looking at that and looking at what people see as the founder role and that sexiness and that cool and that rule the world type atmosphere versus reality, what does that feel like from living it?
Absolutely. I love talking about this to people who are considering doing a startup, because it's easy for me to say like, oh, here are my 2 exits, and it's years of work behind the scenes. And most of it, it's me looking a lot less glamorous than I am today, in my glasses. I'm tired, and it's just me and my laptop, and that's it. And the only people who really understand are your co-founders, because they've been through the journey. And it's also, man, if I had to go back in time, I would have never been able to predict how emotional it is and how draining it is. I like to think of myself as like very logical. I am an operations person in my heart. I joke that my mom birthed a project manager. It's just how I think.
I love that. I think my mom would agree that she also, yeah.
All of us here. It's just we popped out that way. It's how our brains work. But the ups and downs and that little voice in my head saying this might not work. You might have poured your entire soul into ClearMask and it's never going to take off. And that was always there. So if I had to go back, I wish I could have quieted that voice quite a bit, but man, I'm not sure if I had the tools at the time to quiet that voice. But it's both very, very motivating, but not necessarily in the healthiest way.
I mean, you mentioned from 0 to 2 months to going global, and I'm sure, especially in the early months when it's hard to get that initial traction, when that voice is so loud. How did you navigate that, and what are the key things that you do in that initial 2 months of initial growth that helped you, and the things you wished you would have done differently?
Yeah, so I feel like we were in this unique position with the pandemic, and then there's like what I tell my clients about, like getting ready and getting in, especially I'll talk about healthcare, getting into healthcare, which is notoriously difficult. So we came in and the demand was huge. The reason for that was standard masks. The supply chain was completely blocked because they were in such high demand that they were completely sold out globally. And our mask looked completely different. If you can see what it looks like, it's plastic, there's foam. It's just completely different supply chain, completely different materials. There was no shortage on foam. There was no shortage on plastic. And so we were able to come in and fulfill this incredible demand. And so that's a gift that most startups don't have. You don't normally go into a market and you're just so inundated with demand that you're just trying to keep up. And that's how we came into it. So my thinking was, how do we meet the demand as quickly as possible with the resources that we don't have? So it started off, I was the entire customer success department. You're looking at it right here. It was me answering emails. It was me answering the phone. It was, it's just me and my email. And then, starting to create templates and copy and paste the same thing and figure it out in real time. By the way, while I had my day job, and all of my co-founders also had their day jobs too. So it was a crazy time. So that's what we experienced. That never happens. I feel like because usually you're not in a global unprecedented pandemic. Or what I tell my clients to do is healthcare, especially getting into the hospital systems, is tricky. So usually you need your champion, if it's a nurse, a doctor, someone who has political clout within the system that, can help get you to something that's called a value analysis committee and get that decision made. What you need to do is show a balance between value and showing that this will save the hospital system money and also be good for patients. And what usually breaks my heart in this process is sometimes something that's better for patients or even better for providers, but it doesn't save money or generate more revenue. It's not going to work. So make sure you have that value proposition ready to go. For us, we were something that was essential, needed at the time. And for certain populations, you have to have it. For deaf and hard of hearing, for folks that are English isn't necessarily their first language, makes it so much easier. For kids, I remember we were big in education, and during the pandemic, when the little kids did story time, you could see a change in their faces, the 2 to 5 year olds, where when you talked like this, they were just there looking around, they're not engaged, they're kind of fidgeting. You put on a transparent mask, they're locked in because they're looking at your face, and they're looking at those cues, and they're looking at the excitement in the story coming from your face. And so I think that shows how important that value proposition is for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, that might be because when you look at the ClearMask and, clowns have that border around their mouth as well. So
It's true. It does highlight almost to a certain extent the mouth and the smiles, and you get so many cues from that area. You talked about being kind of the customer success department and, and that piece of it. And of course we've talked before, and you also did a lot of the operations, just the back end of business.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do. and be
Thank
a
you.
founder, and be a founder and be kind of that first mover and play both sides. When you look back at it, do you have any advice for people who are doing that, and or would you change it now that you've done it and it's gone and it was a success?
I feel like a lot of my experience was, okay, we have this issue we need to solve. Let's figure out what the scope of the problem is. Let's figure out how to solve it. Let's research a couple solutions, figure out what's cost effective. Let me teach myself how to do it. And then let me teach my team how to do it. And you have 24 hours. So that was typically what it was. So I think the biggest thing was budget. If I had a budget for different tools and things, I probably would have upgraded to different systems, but we just didn't have that. And I feel like it gave me a lens for really looking critically at different services of what of this truly is better than Microsoft Excel. But truly, what in this do you need that can give you more value than Excel? And I just always had to look at it through those lenses, because if you're paying for one service, you're not paying for something else. And so we needed QuickBooks for sure. So we had to have QuickBooks. So what other services do you actually need? And I do think that aggressive look at the different services that are available is helpful, but sometimes I probably would have added more if we had the budget available.
Yeah.
And that also makes it quite interesting, as the tools grow as the budget grows, because I've seen so many times as well, a lot of founders, I mean, especially now, everyone is just putting everything on a card. And yeah, I've heard stories where some companies have 45 different tools just for marketing, and they're not generating revenue. And that just sounds a little bit strange. But it is that practice of budget, and then as you grow with budget, how then do you transition into the tools that you really need? So how did you plan that out, and how fast did that happen?
Yeah, so it was an interesting period where we went from pre-revenue because of our regulatory status to revenue very quickly. And then we had like vendors coming in from all sides of like re-emerging. And I remember we went through a phase of like, should we do either Salesforce or like the Microsoft suite for everything? And it sounded great when they would tell us, how everything fit together. It sounded awesome. It sounded like it would sync all together. And then we looked at the cost and the time to implement it. And it was mostly the time to implement it. Like we just don't have that time right now. We need to keep going. And the systems that we had, I'll be honest, they did scale. They, kept up at tens of millions of dollars in revenue. And I don't think they slowed us down. At that time, we were moving so fast that it was either I spend my time implementing a system or I keep things moving forward. And I needed to keep things moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And that time to implement, I think a lot of founders, it's hard to sit through that sales pitch and not fall a little in love with what they're telling you. Oh, it does that and this other thing, and be like, oh, that sounds amazing. But the time to implement, really recognizing that. I love how you talked about that, because I think that for founders is a resource that so many people just don't think about. Like, because you're working so hard, because you're working so constantly, it's not a never-ending resource that you can just pull from constantly, that you can just have, there's really a finite number of hours in a day, in a week, in a cycle. And so you have to really consistently say, it's not just about the money. It's not just about the opportunity of using this platform or what it could give us. It's how heavy is the lift? How much of my time, my soul, my focus is now off of the goal, because I'm dealing with this one platform and trying to get it to do all the things that we were told it could do. And so that time resource is a really big factor. And I think when you're vetting a platform, when you're looking at a new piece of software or a new system or things like that, it's the resource that is most invisible to people, almost, I think. And a lot of that is it's because you have these amazing people who are selling you this product, who know this product, and this is their job, is to tell you how cool it is and how easy it is. But remember, they're experts, and they have experts who have set it up sitting next to them. And so their idea of how easy it is and your idea of how easy it is may be very far apart.
So, I mean, from that perspective, it's when you're looking at that scale. So, what do you see the difference of founders who are successful in getting into zero to the first $1 million growth versus running a company then that's at the the next $1 to $10 million growth?
Yeah, I think it's you weed out the people who can think ahead. So I feel like that's something that I was really proud that our startup did, is we were always thinking ahead. I hear of different startup founders being like, oh, I'm working on this application last minute, or, we're trying to scramble on this opportunity. We weren't scrambling. We had everything planned out ahead. We were working on things that were in 3 months. We were working on things that were in 6 months. And, once we were out of that 2-month crunch, and I think even in the beginning, before we were on the market, we were always thinking forward. We had our strategy and who was responsible for what, and we put it on a Gantt chart, and it was an aggressive timeline. But I think something about like writing it down and assigning people and just having it checked in on all the time, it always came true. It always, we always met our deadlines. Even if they were really aggressive. And so I think going from the first 0 to 1, you can kind of scramble things. You can make things happen overnight. You can like pull relationships up that, get you to that, first couple customers. But then if you don't have systems set up, if you're not like constantly thinking into the future, I don't know how you can really forecast and run a business. It's kind of being able to like validate a concept, the first 1 to 0 to, excuse me. It's validating a concept, the first 0 to 1 million, and then it's running a business, the first 1 to 10 million. And like, that's where I got really excited, is like, oh my gosh, I want to run the business. I can set it up and do all of that, but like running a, you know, a large business that's completely mine, it was my dream.
That's awesome. I love that. That was the fun part for you. It's
Yeah.
not the fun part for a lot of people, which is totally fine as well. Do you think that that thought process that you went through where your team was kind of thinking ahead, is because of kind of your background in life sciences and med, and because when you apply for things like FDA, and you have to really plan ahead and get all that documentation. So do you think that piece really kind of helped propel your team to that direction, or do you think it just happened to be the people that you were working with?
So you make a really good point. I think especially medical devices and really anything that goes through a highly regulated environment, you have to be thinking ahead. So for example, whatever marketing claims you're going to make on your website, those have to be approved by the FDA, what, you know, depending on whatever pathway you go through. And so whatever those claims are, that's what you want to be thinking about in your application or in your clinical trials as part of your application. So you're thinking about your marketing and even writing your marketing points before you've even validated the efficacy of your product. And that's just how you have to think in terms of medical, highly regulated different devices. So I do think you need to think ahead. There's also so many systems that you need to have in place as part of compliance. So one is a quality management system, or QMS. You have to document all of your design processes, and then you have to have it ready to go post-market. If someone experiences some sort of safety issue, they need to be able to contact you. You need to understand what's a reportable event, how to investigate it, things like that. And that keeps us all safe. You don't want unsafe products out there, especially medical products. And so I do think having those systems and that regulation requires you to plan ahead what your value propositions are going to be, who your target market is, what your claims are going to be. You can't switch your claims after you get your regulatory approval. It's just the FDA will come and audit your website.
That's not great.
No, they do it. They're authorized to do it. But
no. I mean, if it's wrong and it's on your
yes.
website, if they audit you and they have a finding, nobody wants it from the government.
No, you never want an audit from the government where they have a finding. That's never good. That's never.
No, I know that from my background with the IRS. Findings, bad.
Findings are bad.
I love that.
Okay, so I mean, and also carrying on from this whole strategy, what was the mentality? Because I know there's a lot of fail and fail fast as you start navigating through that initial growth spurt and then looking at a predetermined strategy. Is there any shift at some stage where you go from this more, I would say, yes and fail and fail first mentality that's a bit more scrappy into more structure? And at what point does that happen?
I feel like it has to be throughout. So speaking of scrappy, our engineer was making masks in her apartment, and then every week she would come and bring us the new prototypes and we would try them on and comment, and she would iterate. So, you know, the fail fast starts right then. You know, she could create a new one. We're like, no, this isn't it. Or she could give us a new prototype. We're like, yes, this is a great direction. Let's keep going and keep designing. And I think also you have to have the mentality, or at least we definitely have the mentality, that we are going to be the new market category leader in a new category. So transparent masks, we're a new category, and we are going to be the market category leader. We had a regulated device, which positions us as a category leader. We were the #1 across the world. We got regulatory approvals in whatever jurisdiction that we needed to show that it was a medical device, which positions you higher. And it was also a mentality with the team. We are the #1 category leader, and we're going to act like it, and we're going to perform like it. And with that, my philosophy is you give it your best, whatever process, whatever you think is going to work, give it your best shot, get input from your team, because especially the frontline people on your team, they have the most wisdom. So you absolutely want to get their input because they see how things work, and you can sometimes miss all of that. So we get our collective wisdom, we implement something, and then let's watch it. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't work, and let's tweak it as we go. So a great example in customer success, always tweaking the templates. If we get a response back from somebody, they're too angry, we needed to be a little nicer in the template or apologize a little bit more.
Yeah.
Some literally be like, we need to add another apology in there, if there was a shipping delay or something, or you see somebody that's really enthusiastic about the product. Maybe we want to invite them to review us somewhere. Just looking for those opportunities constantly and seeing what doesn't work as an opportunity, not a failure. You're going to fail. You're putting something out there and testing it. A lot of it's going to fail. And so letting the failure go and instead treating it like, okay, what can we do with this? A great example is, again, with customer success, we got different complaints coming in about our product. People didn't like this or they didn't like that. So we collected that and then developed a new product line that addressed all of those concerns. And then released that new product line is like, here, you don't like, different aspects of our original device. Here's the new device. We listened to you and we designed something based on what you want. And that was a huge commercial success. So absolutely, you're always failing, but you're always learning and improving from that failure.
Which also poses a bit of the question is, okay, how fast did you grow from the initial 2 or 3 people? As you say, you all had part-time jobs when you really needed to then come on board and scale faster. Yeah. So maybe from 2 to 10 and then 10 to the next 150. So what was the progression of growth in people in the company throughout this timeline with the revenue growth? And then more intriguing for me is, how did you maintain this scrappy mentality and those habits as the team started growing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we started off with just us 4, and the 4 of us still did a ton of the work all the way through, which I was happy with that philosophy that we took. We added portions of our team. Unfortunately, it was just like the global pandemic. And so we were doing our best. We actually brought on interns from Johns Hopkins University because that's what we could foresee. A lot of them had really great internships lined up with like Johnson & Johnson or Amgen, different biotech or life science companies that had to be canceled. And so there was an abundance of really strong talent that was available, and they wanted to do something, especially something that's relevant and exciting. And we were a mass company during the pandemic, and it was very relevant and exciting. And so we kind of got our best, the best talent we could pull from. And the people we brought in were really fantastic. What was really nice about an internship is you can have people work for you for a couple months, and essentially you're interviewing them and they're interviewing you the whole time. And we gave a lot of people offers to join us full time, and they've been trained in how we work, how things, the systems, and, how flexible we can make it. And so they joined us, and then we were able to bring in specific talent like finance or sales, like specific talent that we actually wanted. But what was really nice about bringing in people who could do lots of different things is we were so agile, and our headcount was much lower than a lot of other companies, especially with our revenue size. And I think that's because we were able to basically have standard operating procedures, and people were expected to do multiple roles and shift based on what the demand was. So the pandemic was all about waves, as we all experienced. And so being able to work in one area and then shift to another area, like let's say you have some shifts in customer success, but then you need to work on logistics because we have some big bulk orders coming in from overseas that we need to have arrangements made for. There's just different things that need to be done behind the scenes. And we honestly had a wonderful team. They were agile. They were ready to do lots of different things. They were talented in so many different ways. And the way I thought about staffing and who was doing what was, what are your talents? What are you interested in doing and excited about doing? And let's see if we can pair that together with what the company needs. And so I always told them, like, whatever you're interested, tell me, and I'll do my best to put you on those things. And I would also see different talent from people. Like my right-hand ops person she was a great designer. So she helped us with some of our materials before we brought on our designer. She had a much better eye than me. I was like, yes, please help me with this. My design eye, you don't want it. So, looking for maybe what's underneath the surface and giving people a chance to showcase their entire talent, I think is something that might be available at startups if startups think wisely. That might not be available in like larger corporate jobs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those I call them Swiss Army people
Yes.
are so integral in startup world because things change so quickly and sometimes the various needs are all over the map. And it's just like, okay, I know your role is this, but we have this situation, so we're gonna switch perspectives a little bit and put you over here. And that's a thing that I think it's one of the things, having worked on both sides, I wish corporates and large scale companies might look at a little differently. Like there is some benefit to saying, what do you do? What do you like to do? And what do you want to learn more about? Because then you get a whole staff of people who stay longer, are happier, are more interested in what they're doing. And that iterative process of what we do in either operations or the product, it's also something people do in their own lives and with what they like to do and what they do. And I think if we were more geared towards that keeping, because again, it's resources. And did those people stay? I'm guessing. Did they stay for a long time? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they like it. They want to stay. They want to grow. They want to be with the company. And so you don't end up spending that all those resources, time, energy, knowledge loss, on finding new people. Instead, you just
Yes.
have a team. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not everybody wants to be a Swiss Army knife, and not everybody is a Swiss Army knife. But once you find them, you're like, yes, this is what startups need. And it's a very specific attitude, it's a skill set, it's enthusiasm, it's willingness. And it's okay if not people aren't a Swiss
Yeah.
Army knife. It's totally okay. But when you find them, we basically had all Swiss Army knives on our team. And so it just made things work really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in that huge scale and very quick pace that was happening, I'm sure. I'm sure. And so when you were talking about iterating on the more operational side and things like that, did you use a lot of like automations and integrations to kind of make your life easier, especially when you were smaller and getting to that place when you were growing? Or was it a lot of manual kind of work and touching things and doing all of that piece?
So we worked with the Shopify platform because that was our e-commerce platform, and that was the primary thing that we used. I'll say that we customized Shopify quite a bit to make it palatable for our industries. So our big industries were governments, education, and healthcare. So think kind of like slow types of purchasing processes, lots of bureaucracy, lots of paperwork, and a lot of hand holding throughout the process. I found they were used to having a dedicated person from the vendor side work with them on every step of the way, and purchases could take 6 weeks, and that didn't mean anything. That wasn't even a delay. That was just standard timelines. And so, having them be like, hey, why don't you just order on this e-commerce platform? That was not what they were used to. And they weren't used to that at all. They were like, no, I give you paperwork and you keep it on file and we exchange PDFs. And so we essentially retrofitted Shopify for that experience so that they could complete the ordering process, but on their own. And it saved so much time. For example, they could submit a purchase order and then we would review it, apply it, get it shipped and everything went through the same process. We also had a ton of tax exempt, schools, hospitals, lots of tax exemptions. And so they could submit their tax exemption paperwork through that process, and they could order everything. And then we would just double check that it matched the PO, which was a very fast process. I think even now with AI tools available, we could probably automate that. Check to make sure it was a legit
Order.
a legit tax exemption.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
But it was a very fast process. And so we're taking people who are used to one type of ordering and be able to completely change them and make them open to an e-commerce type of platform. And that way individuals could buy one box, or a government could buy 20,000 masks at the same time.
That's impressive. That flexibility built into a system. And now I just want to pick your brain about how you did that. But
yeah, to be fair, it was not built in. It was very customized.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
I'm just
Shopify is great, and I would use it again, but it was not built to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I say, it's great that the vendor had the flexibility to really bring about that flexibility and the team to work with you on that. So I'm sure they benefiting greatly now from that new way of turning their e-commerce platform into a purchase order processing platform.
Yeah, and doing both at the same time.
Then, I mean, so from looking at expertise as well, there's a lot of, I think, debate sometimes with founders of insourcing versus outsourcing, using expertise. How did you navigate that, and what stages were you using expert advisors? When is it an optimal time to really use external advisors versus starting to hire that expertise internally?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that as soon as you become a founder, you become immediately blind to what the market looks like, how people perceive you, and like what the average person, how they see your product, and what they perceive value in. And so for us, it was really helpful to get outside people to help us be able to understand like how we fit into different markets where we didn't have the background. We all came from healthcare, but for example, none of us have worked in the education sector. And so understanding how do you position your product for the education sector, an area that we just didn't have a background in, that was really helpful. And also understanding how to set up sustainable sales processes. Actually, I'd like to cut that out. Yeah.
Okay.
I decided against it. Let me go back. Being able to have outside people who understand the industry and be able to see your innovation and understand how people perceive it, how people might perceive it, and where the new opportunities are is always really interesting, because immediately you become blind and it's really hard to be able to perceive your product in a way that's accurate with the market. So one example is anytime we brought in a new team member, we had them audit the website. So do like a very thorough review of the website. What are your impressions of the website? We would also get people's family members to do that. So we would have them like look at the website and kind of narrate what they would see and how they would perceive it. And it's really important for the founders to hear that, because it's their, it's their truth. It's how they're perceiving it. It's their viewpoint. But sometimes you think something is very clear and it's not. It's just not clear. You wrote the copy and you're like, of course, everyone will understand this. No one understands it. And you need to know that sooner rather than later so you can edit it. Because what I found is my perception of the product and other people's perception of the product are just very different. And knowing that as a founder is really helpful. So getting the outside insight and wisdom where you're just completely blind to it on the inside is helpful. And then I think also calculating like, how much time will it take me to learn this? And can I get anybody on the team to learn this? Who can become the new subject matter expert on this? And if no one likes it and everyone hates it, like maybe we should outsource it and it's super technical. Like SEO was really important for us. Our name was ClearMask and we wanted to be the first thing that came up when you search transparent mask. Our co-founder that was in charge of marketing did a fantastic job, and she was very knowledgeable in that area, but all the technical tweaks, it wasn't worth her time to learn that. And there was nobody really on the team where like that specific knowledge made sense for them to really learn and master. And so that was an example of something we outsourced.
All right. So it's really looking at that, what someone's good at and how valuable is their time. And then it's like, all right, let's kick it, kick it out to an expert or, outsource it in whatever way we can. So that way we get the best option and we're not wasting our resources on something that takes too long to upskill to, which is smart. So those pieces that you built yourself and founders today, as they're looking at this difference between the glamour of the startup founder versus the reality, and I know that you mentor as well now. So do you advise them to do the same thing that you did, take on that operations hat as well, that your team did, and kind of handle all that in themselves? Or are there other times and other situations where it's very clear to you, you're like, no. Go find someone who does this piece, or go get help in doing this lift. And what is that based on when you're looking at new founders that you're helping with?
Yeah, I think really it depends if you want to outsource it or have somebody in-house. Is like, do you have somebody who is a founder or a leadership capacity who just has the demeanor and personality for it and who likes it? Like when we were ClearMask was just starting, I was like, I would like to try the accounting. And no other founders were like, yeah, I really gonna fight you for that. We're all great. I'd like to prepare our first taxes, like pre-revenue taxes. And they were like, great. No one else wanted to do that.
He's a special type.
Yeah. So I think you need somebody who has the aptitude and the excitement for it. And, is that just that type of personality? Also had they were just born with like high attention to detail and being able to analyze things. And there's no judgment if that's you or that's not you. So I feel like sometimes there's somebody on the team where that's them. And if there's not, that is okay. You don't want all of your founders to be like that necessarily. And so I think if you don't innately have that person on the team, I would go ahead and get somebody. There's so many great fractional COOs. Scale Spark does a fantastic job. You guys are putting together the platforms you need and like training everybody on it. Like, wow, you could basically like replace an entire founder and like department doing that, which would be really nice for a lot of startups. So I think if you don't have that person, or even if you do have that person, like saving a lot of time by getting that stack set up could be really nice.
That is what we do, and that's what we love doing. And we actually aren't looking to replace anyone, but we can come in as like that person before you want to pay for a person, because people are expensive, whether you're paying in equity or whether you're paying in cash money. So, but that being said, have you run into, and I have, so this comes from experience, have you run into founders who think they're good at these things, and you have to gently redirect them as like,
Yeah.
maybe this part isn't for you?
Yeah, so I do coaching as well with one-on-one with founders. I've been through the experience. I know what it's like, and sometimes it's helpful to be able to talk to somebody who's been through that same journey, or be able to talk through things that are only at an executive level. You can't really delegate it necessarily to your staff. So I help with that. And sometimes people have the COO title, and then I get to know them a little bit, and I'm like, wow, you are so good with people. You're so good at sales. You're so good at closing, not so much at project management. So let's take your strengths and what you're so good at, and the stuff that maybe is in your title, maybe that's actually not for you, but let's see where you shine and let's put you where you shine. I think all founders, if you're going to be a founder of a company and you're going to have a successful company, you have to shine at many things, and they should be put where they shine, and then delegate other things or outsource it.
Yeah. And I love that, because I will go back to something that you have said multiple times now. It's not a problem if you're not good at everything. I think a lot of founders take this into themselves, that they have to do all the things or it doesn't really count. And it's like, no, no, you really don't. You have to be good at X, Y, and Z, and you're good at those things. Let's focus on those things. But yeah, and that's why I love the fact that you do that. You do that work with founders, and it is that gentle hand to like, let's put you where you shine.
And that's such I think an important point as well is really reassessing what you're good at. And you may come in as one role, but if you're better at a different role, not to be so tied to, oh, this is what I wanted to do and this is the title I wanted to have, but to be able to do that shift. And that also can either hamper companies when teams don't want to do that. And sometimes I've even seen in some of our work in the past where literally the CEO and CTO swapped roles and titles. The CTO was a better CEO and the CEO a better CTO. They both were technical, so that helped. But the fact that they were humble enough to say and recognize that and change that, which help accelerate them to the next level. So it is a key point that don't be too tied to the roles that you may start off in. And I know one of the sort of investors and basically for successful founders I've followed, Brett J. Fox, he always mentions, he says their companies, they used to once every 12 months reassess everyone's roles, if they still fit for that role or whether they want to move on to something different, where they can be more productive and help the company scale to the next point. And that flexibility is tough for some founders to have.
Yeah, I think it's also important to understand like where people's perspectives and bias come in and just name it, and know that it's okay. For example, sometimes you're in a new situation, you're trying to read the situation because you want to understand how you can work together with different external parties and how you can negotiate things. And having multiple people in the room, what was your perception of that meeting? How can we work together? What were your takeaways? Understanding who's going to be, maybe more skeptical of people, who's going to be more trusting, who's going to be, more open-minded, who's going to be a little more cautious. And all of those are okay, but understanding it. I would even tell our staff, like, you're going to hear from this person, that person tends to have this type of bias. I tend to have this bias. And so we'll come in and give you perspectives, and that's where, this is what you can expect from us. And I think that that's good to know. And it's also good to have a variety. If everybody has the exact same perception, then you're not necessarily getting all of the nuances of the situation and not seeing all the possibilities as well.
Yeah. And that's important to be open for that. It's like, well, I think the DNA of an innovative companies is around looking at different aspects, getting the power of association going, experimenting. And operations also is, I think, quite key to help build those habits. So how did you find that cultural, because part of the thing is you want to maintain your culture as the company grows. So what role did operations play in creating these cultural habits and also preventing communication barriers within the team?
Yeah. So I think that part of my job was like delivering key messages. One key message was, we are the #1 transparent mask company in the world, and we act like it. And all of you are here for a very good reason. And I know that you all can deliver and, keep us at that spot. The second thing was, we're here to decrease barriers in communication. And that is our purpose. And that is where we come from. Other aspects of the business we always need to take care of, but that is our core, and that's why we're here. And I found people who were passionate about that and solving that issue, and that always came through. So there was the messaging piece of it. And then we established goals with everybody that was visible to the entire team, or we would have each department has goals that are moving the company forward, and then each person set up their own goals, and that was always visible to everybody at all times. And so everybody could see how the company was moving forward and how their specific contribution fit into how the company was moving forward, and that mission of being the #1 company and helping people remove communication barriers worldwide. And so it was always connected back into that mission. And I think one of the reasons we had such a good team culture and such good staff is everybody was aligned to that. And if you're not about the mission, that's okay. There's plenty of jobs that are available for you, but that's what we were seeking. And you really needed buy-in to be part of that team. And so it was very cohesive in that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm of the opinion that the smaller the company, the more you really need people to buy into the mission. Because honestly, like you're gonna be working a lot and you're gonna be in each other's pockets a lot, and you have to all be paddling in the same direction, really, and kind of have drank the Kool-Aid, if you will. So, I definitely understand that perspective. And for companies that's not what they're going after, that's great. And I'm hoping it works for you, but a lot of times in startups, I definitely see that drive towards people who are really bought in, who are really, really wanting to be a part of this thing. And I think it's very clear in the startup atmosphere that helps, that can help teams very much.
Yeah, and that was something that helped me too. I mean, talking about the founder journey, you need motivation. And I found that the anger of seeing lack of lack of accessibility in healthcare, someone going in and just not being believed, or getting the wrong information, or going through a really traumatizing and scary experience, and our product could come in and help eliminate that. That's what fired me, is like, if I can do these things and have a greater reach for our product, someone can have a much better experience. And that end user was what motivated me and kind of set a fire underneath me. Because I mean, you're tired a lot and it's easy to get bogged down. And I think if you don't have that alignment back to why you're doing it, it's just easy to give up.
Yeah. And that's so key. And then I mean, obviously, and above all this, just to run and manage the business, and then comes the fundraise process, right? One thing of the fundraise process, which I also talk a lot about with founders about, is do understand that when you involved in a fundraise, you are out of your business at least 3 days of the week. Which, if you don't have others who can take up that slack in business, and this is where business continuity management comes in, then you do need to be aware, because you can't really outsource your fundraise process, which I know a lot of people try as well. So what were the dynamics and what were the things that basically helped the business propel while you were focused on a fundraise, and what are the things you would have done differently?
Yeah. So what we did is we had 2 people ready to pitch at any time. It was myself and the CEO. And we were a company of lots of different people with different backgrounds. And so we qualified for a lot of different funds of people with diverse backgrounds or different types of backgrounds. And so that also helped as well, to have like 2 different people, pitching, and you can see different perspectives. For us, we really focused on non-dilutive funding. So it was a different process than the typical like fundraising sprint that you see a lot of times with investors. So it was going through accelerator programs. We went through 7 accelerator programs and we won the grand prize at most of them. So that was a lot of time and a lot of participation, but it also educated the team on all the business aspects of things, so that by the time we did hit the market, people had some background in it. I was the only one with a business background and with an MBA. And so it was helpful to get the rest of the team, from a healthcare or an engineering background, just to have more background on the commercialization process and different things to consider. So that was helpful. We also, you just have to have your pitch ready to go pretty much at any time. I think I can still give the pitch. But I tell founders, like, You need to be able to like give it when you're like blacked out. Because sometimes, there's a high stress situation. You're on a big stage in front of lots of people, and like you do kind of black out in the moment, but you still need to be able to give the pitch. And so it just needs to be so ingrained in your subconscious that you can do it at any time. And then also understand what aspects of the pitch, just always be looking at your audience and seeing like how people react to different things. So I started doing visual cues during my pitch because we're promoting, the access of visual cues, and people don't always realize that they need the visual cues. And so I would say, borrow a couple of things from sign language, like we're going to, talk about the first product, the first item, the second item, the third item, to visually show people how those visual cues help them understand and communicate. And then therefore how the mask showing more visual cues and aspects of the face can help them understand and communicate. So little things I would pull up, or seeing, you see people really resonate with a specific example you give. Great, let's dig into that. Always use it. When people start to glaze over, let's really think about that. Maybe it's not tight enough or exciting enough. But yeah, always improving and always tweaking it till you have something that tends to work for people.
Yeah. And I like that plan of like having two people who could give it. I think a lot of startups that I've worked with have that single point of like, this is the person who pitches. And it's like, what if that person is sick, has an emergency, all the business continuity stuff that you think about with business is the same thing with fundraising. And I think that kind of gets glossed over. And I do like the fact that it forces your hand to delegate, to hand off and say, okay, someone else has to cover this for this period of fundraising. And in order to do that, where's the documentation? How do I train these people? Where are those pieces? And how do I make sure that the business keeps going so I can go to this event and pitch and go to, or the CEO can go to this event and pitch, and balls don't get dropped. And balls will always get dropped, people. Let's be clear. No matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what you are doing, balls will get dropped, but you just don't want the floor covered in them, right? You want the normal amount of like, I'm so glad you're back. Here's this thing, instead of, I'm so glad you're back. The building's on fire, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wanted to make it so everybody can leave and have a vacation and not be bothered during vacation. That was really important to me and for our team culture. And so I would set up, even my away is like, I'm away. If there's something that's needed, you text me and I'm on it, but I don't expect you to text me. I think I got one text while I was away, like all the different times. And it was a legitimate one, but you don't need to, if you're there and your business falls apart, you haven't done a good job of getting people on board with the practices and being a good communicator. It's not about like you setting up the perfect process. It's a process that works and that people understand and can implement.
Yeah. So we're about out of time. And so before we wrap everything up, what is a key takeaway you want people to have as they think about the reality versus the glamour of being a founder and how to approach that?
I think what you see in the media are the highlights. And so you see somebody pitching or holding the giant check or, showing their new product. And behind that is tens of thousands of hours of work. And founding a company is an uphill battle. It's a difficult job. It's incredibly rewarding, and they've been the best jobs that I've had, but it's really difficult. And you have to have that calling and that fire within you to want to do it. And if you do, go do it. It'll be like the most rewarding thing you do and one of the most fun and exciting things that you ever do. But really think about if that's you and if you're willing to, when it's 11 o'clock at night and it's just you and your glasses and your frumpy home clothes, are you still willing to do it? Yeah. Because that's what it's going to be most of the time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. And as I say, it's what you mentioned is also so important around that motivation. I was also listening to Mark Cuban where he talks about his failures. And yeah, even though he's a billionaire, he's had failures, and he was pretty clear about having that resilience to be able to recognize it, either shut that thing down, move on to the next thing, or to pivot. But that resilience is so key, in that grit to say, this is my passion this is my motivation for what I want to shift, which is so key, because as you say, being an entrepreneur is not an easy, smooth road. And there is a timing aspect to it, because, as you say, you were very fortunate that once you had your FDA, a pandemic happened and demand was just insane. Um, so, and it does take a bit of luck as well. So,
Yeah, you
but
hear people that say, an overnight success takes 10 years. I mean,
yeah.
that was true for us. We had worked nonstop for about 3.5 years, and then we were an overnight success. So it's never an overnight success. There's a lot of work
The
ahead.
longest overnight ever.
Yes.
Uh, that's so valuable, and really happy for so it's always so impressive to hear about your background, and how you were able to have 2 exits, which is great, especially for a female founder. That's fantastic. And but yeah, where do people get hold of you if they want to reach out to you, Elyse? And
Yeah, please check out my website. I'm going to spell my name because it's usually spelled wrong. So it's Elyse Heob, and the spelling is tricky. Elyse Heob as in boy. Elyse Heob as in boy. You can go to ElyseHeob.com. You can find out all about me. You can also search Elyse Heob on LinkedIn and find about me and get in touch there as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know there's a whole lot more we can talk about, so we'll probably have you back on at some point, but thank you again. This has been Offs or Die. Follow us, like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Ops or Die, the podcast for all things business operations, with your hosts, Maria Pienaar and Katie Whitcraft. Our theme music, composed by Min Tran, and editing services provided by Troubleshoot Productions. For more information on how to make your operations smart ops, visit www.scalespark.ai.